point. They were taught to march, they were taught to run, they were taught to be physically fit. Right? The Roman soldier ran 3 miles a day. The modern English soldier runs 7 miles a day. The American soldier probably 5 miles a day. The Germans probably 7 or 8 miles a day. You're building up the stamina of the soldier so that they can do that 25-mile march. I've only got relatively little reservist military experience myself, but it's to get that spirit in them. It's to get that mentality that they can do anything, that there's no barrier, that they can overcome any enemy. And this is a key point. We don't do martial arts in the military because that you're ever going to get into this situation, although people obviously have. I mean, if you've read a book by Sven Hassel called Legion of the Damned, he bites the throat out of one of his enemies, and that's about as raw as you're ever going to get. To be able to use arm locks and kicks and punches and stuff is a necessary part of war, but it's not going to be the thing that's going to win you battles. It's going to be your technology. So there's a science of war and an art of war, and you have to remember the two in combination. If you get one out of kilter, you can get things like Fallujah. We took over Iraq in like 4 weeks, and then we found that we were being surrounded. Why? Because they didn't use they believed that the science of war, which decisively won the battles, destroyed 100,000 Iraqi soldiers, but did not take on the concept of spatial dominance. If we had gone to war with Iraq in 1991, with the forces we had, we could have occupied the country. With the forces we had in 2003, we can't occupy the country. It's basically being done by consent. To occupy a country like Iraq, you'd need 1 million troops, and it's almost immoral that we didn't have that amount of troops to go in. In Afghanistan, 600,000 troops to occupy a country like that. This was because the science of war, the abilities of technology, put a fog over the minds of the people who were planning it, and then pushed on straight too quickly into a plan which was poorly coordinated within the first few hours. It was supposed to be shock and awe, but it started with a squib. Nevertheless, more bombs were dropped in that short space of time than in all of the Second World War. More sorties were carried out, and so the pace of war is always continuing to push on. Now the Chinese, for instance, have taken on the science of war, but they've not forgot the art of war. Their soldiers are trained to be able to do 60-mile marches in a day. These are conscripts. They're designed to make any Western army that seeks, say the Americans would seek to have a quick war in China over, say, Taiwan. And the Chinese whole strategy is to delay that, to delay until the politics at home defeats the military that they could not themselves defeat. It's about gaining time, and you see this with terrorism. It's all about gaining time now, gaining time for more people to become radicalised and to join the fight. Now they become radicalised whether we're fighting them or not, because they're a bunch of evil religious fanatics, and I know all the concepts about blowback. That is something that is real and something we do have to take on board, but it doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day you're dealing with basically organised crime in the form of Al-Qaeda. What is the future of the Western way of war? Well, I've detailed in some way that it will be learning to be scientists, soldiers, but the main thing we will still keep having to reinforce is the fitness of our troops, that we that hunter athlete type of put a specialist builder as well is still going to be reinforced all the time, so that while the technology builds up around the soldier, he's still going to be a human being, still having to overcome what is a very unnatural thing to do, to hunt other human beings and to kill them, or to wound them, or to capture them. This is something that is not natural. That's why only 1 in 10, or maybe 1 in 100 people can literally do that. But they are often the kinds of people who are mentally unstable and shouldn't be in the military in the first place. To be that alpha male is also to be somebody with compassion, to know when to stop the firefight, because otherwise you get things like the NKVD or the Schutzstaffel, which is the other kind of SS, not the Waffen SS, which was armed, but they did do some atrocities as well. And the Schutzstaffel, the special squads, were used to go and massacre civilians. Why? Because they're going to kill frenzy, and they were never actually fighting regular troops. They were always fighting either partisans or collecting civilians. This is why they became immoral. The Western soldier is fighting for the ideals of democracy. It might sound ephemeral. At the end of the day, they're fighting for their mates who are next to them. But the democratic principles that allow them to have their life in sort of a social democratic state, or a libertarian state if you live in the Jeffersonian libertarian state that you live in America, is the crux of it. Otherwise, why do we fight at all? Why don't we just surrender to people like Al Qaeda, or people who are Zionists, or Christian end-timers, or Satanists, or whatever? Surrender our society to them. See what they do with it. They'll destroy us because they want to destroy themselves. So the Western way of war has to be against this kind of thing. We can't allow ourselves to be infiltrated by religious flags, or this kind of end sum, end game sort of apocalyptic view of the world. Okay. The Western way of war, although, will continue to be about getting close, being decisive, and annihilation of the enemy. That's why we've been winning, and that's why the Western way of war has now been adopted even in the East, which is said to be a superior way of making war, of course, but it's been adopted by every Eastern and every non-Western country. There's still some places, particularly Africa, where they believe in spiritualism, mysticism and voodoo, where people believe if they cast a spell over them and being called a Simba, a lion or something, their bullets will turn to water and go out of them. I think, as we saw in Sierra Leone, that wasn't the case, and the Paras absolutely trounced the West Side boys.